All right. And so today we will talk about the capabilities for AI transformation. And we have a nice group of two experts in the field. And I'll let our experts introduce themselves. So, Joppe, please go ahead.
Very good. Thank you, Linda. So my name is Joppe Stins. I'm the co-founder of a company called Mavericks. With Mavericks, we focus on three things: data management, process management, and cybersecurity. And we truly believe that if you have a strong foundation in these three areas, every company can unlock a future with AI. And as a company, we have a long-standing relationship with Lepaya. I've actually been working with the company for around 7 to 8 years already as one of the key trainers of the company as well. And together we worked on this webinar as well together. So I'll hand it over to Sophie next.
Thanks, Joppe, and really happy and glad that you're joining us today so that you can also share really some examples and insights from your experience working with many organizations on this topic. I'm Sophie. I work at Lepaya and I collaborate with organizations to design relevant and impactful learning solutions. So I'm really happy to also see some familiar faces in the call whom I've already had the pleasure with to work with. As well as some new ones. So please feel free to also introduce yourself in the chat. It's always nice to see who's with us here today in the room. Yes, and so very briefly, for the ones who don't know Lepaya yet, we are a strategic strategic partner for workforce transformations, really focused on one thing, making sure that learning sticks. So as I mentioned, we design relevant and impactful training programs, and we design those for your whole organization. So from young talents to experienced leaders, as well as sales teams. And for these training programs, we combine self-paced digital learning using our app with facilitator-led sessions, really focused on application on the job. And we support that end to end. So we take care of the seamless rollout, including planning, communication, as well as measuring impact. So we really upskill your workforce to create behavior change and with that drive real impact. And today we're going to show you how that applies to data and AI capabilities. All right. So before we dive in, let me briefly walk you through what we will cover today. So we will start by looking at why, despite all of the investments in AI, so many organizations are still struggling to create measurable business value. And from there, Joppe will share a bit more about the 4 stages of AI transformation and the capabilities needed to actually navigate those effectively. And he will then bring this to life with some use cases that we often see when we collaborate with organizations before we wrap up, where we will have some more time for questions and discussions. So please also feel free to already share any questions you might have throughout the webinar. We will try our best to pick them up along the way and otherwise make sure that we will answer them during the Q&A. But yeah, let's get started with the paradox that we see at almost every organization. Because if we look at the AI landscape, it's very clear. Every single organization is investing heavily in AI. And as a result of that, almost every company is already using AI in one of their business functions. Yet research also really shows that around 95% of those organizations have not seen any measurable impact on their profits. And also, if we look at another research by Gallup, we also see that there's only a really small percentage of employees that believe that AI has actually changed the way that they work. So the real question now actually is, why isn't all this investment translating into business impact? Well, one of the reasons is that many organizations are trying to move faster than their people are ready for. So they are focusing on really deploying the AI technology without developing the capabilities that people actually need to use this new technology confidently and effectively. And that is what will determine whether AI becomes part of everyday work or not. So if we take a look at what we see within organizations, we actually see that for many employees, AI still feels very abstract and sometimes even a little bit overwhelming. And this is why it's so important that as an organization, you really make sure that, first of all, you don't overwhelm employees with introducing dozens of new tools, changing tools a lot, and just throwing it out there without also really then focusing on building that foundational understanding of AI. And while it's important to deploy those AI tools, it is also really important that you focus on building the capabilities that your employees need to effectively navigate this AI transformation. And lastly, AI really is a business impact topic. So if you want a transformation to happen on an organizational level, this will not automatically follow from individuals, experimenting on an individual level. So it really is key to start seeing the AI transformation as a business impact topic that Joppe will also share a little bit more about later. So we're also very curious to hear from all of you. So from your perspective as HR and L&D professionals, how would you describe employee sentiment towards AI in your organization today? So we will give everyone a few seconds to vote so that we can see. All right, so curious but unsure, as well as a mix of all, seem to be the top answers. Resistance quite on the low end, although it of course also is part of the mix of all. So really quite interesting to see. And Joppe, you've worked with many organizations that are at different stages within the AI journey. So do these results reflect a bit also what you see in practice?
Yeah, funnily enough, they actually do. So I see some larger corporate organizations that I do consulting and coaching at, that are actually quite excited for a future with AI, because they're also, I would say, almost obligated to work with AI by senior management. But it also, in terms of some of the changes that are happening, unclarity about the impact of working with AI on their role. I also see some people still a little bit resistant or overwhelmed by all of the opportunities they have. And typically what I see is that the audiences of companies that take more a clear standpoint on AI feel a lot more comfortable with the tools that they're working with just navigating all of these rapid changes, because we have to identify the fact that it is quite a rapidly developing landscape as well. So that's something I think every organization needs to take into account. And things like company-wide policies on working with AI also are, in my opinion at least, becoming more and more important. So when I deliver sessions or when I do coaching at companies, where there is a clear policy, which tools to use, which tools not to use, what type of data should we be able to put in these AI tools, how do we work with it? So not just the tool explanation itself, but also how do we actually work with it? I feel those are the companies at this moment in time, at least, that make true lasting impact. And maybe that's also already, Linda, a good moment to go into our next slide here. So we actually strongly believe that AI transformation is a journey rather than just doing a tool training. So what I oftentimes see organizations do is they develop a tool because they notice that they have to do something to jump on the AI wagon. They identify that their people within the organization are actually already leveraging AI, maybe shadow AI, as I like to call it, meaning a tool that is not federated, not supported by the company itself. So we strongly believe that it starts with understanding. Only then, once you understand what to do with the different types of data, what can you put in it? So a strong foundation, can we work towards individual productivity. individual productivity is, of course, what initially the majority of organizations strive for with an AI capability training or program. Now, once we have unlocked individual productivity, so people know how to work with it, you can start taking a look at what you are currently doing in your work and start redesigning it. Maybe there are some parts of your work that you can automate. For instance, the recurring manual tasks that nobody really likes to work in. Could be potentially that there is some room for automation there. And doesn't per se have to be AI. So it doesn't have to be coding, for instance, or vibe coding. Or sometimes you can just make use of the tools that are already distributed in the organization. So that's the part where we redesign our work. I'm actually also a certified Lean practitioner. And one of the things that I actually like about Lean Six Sigma, I'm not sure if everyone knows, but it's actually Kaizen. And Kaizen means continuous improvement. So for me, a company that is truly leveraging AI also understands that this rapidly changing landscape also means that we as ourselves have to continuously improve. So what I typically tell in every session that I facilitate for Lepaya or throughout is that we have an obligation to ourselves to make sure that we continuously improve ourselves every day a little bit more as well and learn a little new thing every day. Because only then can we actually move towards true organizational transformation. Now, this is the capability journey that we identified and that we see actually quite often in the workplace. And this comes also from me not just facilitating classes for Lepaya or for Mavericks, but also simply from the consulting work that I do. So I'm actually at this moment in time doing a project for the Dutch government, focusing on data literacy and actually quite intertwined with this capability journey. They introduced a tool, very good, but actually quite heavily focused on the tool introduction rather than the capabilities, so revolving around it and the change management. So I'm working with them on unlocking a future with AI as well. Now, if we take a look at the next slide to find out a little bit more about which capabilities are important when designing a data and AI learning journey, it is actually the fact that you have to build for impact. Oh, for some reason my screen turned off. So you have to build for business impact. So that means that you want to design the business outcomes you want to achieve, not just have as an objective AI adoption, but also have a clear story and thought behind, okay, where is AI actually going to make one of my business outcomes more efficient? So don't make AI adoption in and of itself as the main goal, but actually have it supported by business strategy that's underlying. Now, naturally, it also has to be current, practical, and relevant because AI actually evolves very rapidly. I already mentioned it before. So, for instance, if you would have given a prompt engineering training maybe 3 years ago, you would have to prompt to a large language model, an AI tool, for reasoning capabilities. So you would have to prompt it, hey, make sure that you give me a reasoning path. Nowadays, these tools out of the box already understand that reasoning is what we humans desire of it. So that means that tools, as well as the people interacting with it, have to rapidly change. So we have to create learning experience as well that are subject to change. Now, finally, we have to understand that we have to be able to combine hard and soft skills. So still, it's important to have hard skills. So we need to understand how a tool works. But I think developing the change capability around that, so being more subject to change, being more developing the capabilities to critically question the output of an AI model is equally important, not just the focus on an AI tool. So actually, we designed the AI and Data Academy with just that in mind. So if we take you to the next slide, we can talk a little bit more about some of the trainings that are actually involved there. So what we do is we actually defined 3 different topics. The first one being data skills, which means the ability to understand, communicate, to grasp the concept of critically question, analyze data. we strongly believe that if we are going to do more with AI in the future, this is sort of the foundation we need in terms of hard skills as well. And you could say this is somewhere in the gray area because it covers quite hard skills such as Power BI, which might become less relevant for some audience in the near future, but it also talks about data storytelling. Yeah. So that actually is an important thing to keep in mind. Now, data literacy fundamentals, for instance, or data literacy essentials, I should say, also talks quite heavily about the possibility of malinformation. So how do you critically question the results that you are being presented with? I think that this is one of the most important skill sets that we have to develop, because the whole fact that we're working with AI means that we get access to high quality results more and more in an easy way. But we sometimes forget is to critically question those results. So for me, becoming more and more important. Of course, building the harder AI skills, such as creating your own assistants or creating maybe even an agent in Copilot Studio. Those are AI skills that are a little bit more on the harder side. Again, combined with the softer skills, such as AI literacy, meaning what type of data can we actually feed into an AI tool? Is it too sensitive? Can we do so from a compliance standpoint? Should we ethically actually put the data into this tool? And finally, as well, our business skills. So business skills talk more about the translation from these, I would say, semi-harder skills into the real world business application. So how do we prioritize some of the AI initiatives that we are working through, or maybe some of the data or process initiatives that we are working through? How do we take the right decisions? How do we manage the projects? All of these things, I think, are quite important for us to touch upon in this Data and AI Academy. So that brings us to our next slides, which are just some of the use cases that we typically encounter in the workplace. So the organization that I speak with, actually, one of the use cases that I hear quite often is that there is already an existing talent program, and the company is just trying to touch upon how they can implement AI in that program. So there is already an existing talent program. How do we actually put in there an AI capability? And that's actually something that I would like to hear your thoughts about as well in the chat. So if this feels relevant to you. So what we typically hear is that organizations not always want a totally new academy. They just want to integrate AI into what already exists. And that's what we try to do as well, oftentimes in the programs that we already delivered before. So we had an Excel program. Now we have Excel with Copilot incorporated, just to also make sure that AI is present in our learning journeys. The outcome of it is that AI becomes part of a capability rather than a separate initiative. I would say quite important. If we take a look at the next use case, is just building stronger analysts and consultants. And a consultant can, of course, be a consultant of a consulting firm, but you can also have internal consultants. Yeah. So in talent programs where there are talented analysts, consultants that already work with data, but maybe struggle to influence decisions. What we typically do is not focus just on the tool. I think I already stressed that a little bit before. So it's not just a Power BI session we recommend, but also, for instance, critical decision-making, data literacy essentials, or building an AI assistant. So that ensures what Sophie already mentioned, that we create learning programs that are actually connected to each other, which in turn makes sure that everything sticks a little bit better. I'll take a look at the final use case, and then I would love to hear your 2 cents also in the chat of how these resonate. Also, what I oftentimes hear is that organizations want a organization-wide AI upskilling. So that's also, of course, a possibility. Typically, what I see is that it's not just learning only. I heavily suggest that this is one of the use cases that your organization is working on, that you also look into creating a good policy, so a standpoint on what AI is, what we can and cannot do in the organization, and then support it with a learning program. Some of the learning topics we can actually cover here, for instance, is the AI fundamentals or the AI essentials session, in which we practically also leverage AI tools across 3 different focus areas. We can talk more about literacy and ethics. We have data literacy essentials. We can go for leading change processes, because if, of course, you want to do organization-wide AI upskilling, managing the change process alongside it is equally important. So you see that together with Lepaya, we try to create a comprehensive program that actually focuses on target groups across different function profiles. So simply put, from more operational roles all the way to leadership programs. So I'm actually quite curious to hear if there's a use case that you see in your organization. If you feel comfortable sharing it, put it in the chat. I'll hold on for a moment to reply to it.
I think Danielle actually already shared one, Joppe, around infusing leading with AI through an already existing manager training. So curious to hear if you have any experience with that or tips for this.
So let me take a look at is it the comment, interesting to see organizations like Atlassian? Is that the one you were aiming for?
No, it's about
the challenge for us is sustaining transformation efforts. Otherwise, I don't see the comment, unfortunately. Maybe you can address the comment?
Daniela just reposted it, so...
Very good. So we're looking at infusing leading with AI through our manager training. Okay, so I can imagine that. I'm actually quite interested to hear what would be in your original manager training, naturally. But I can imagine that that's a very important topic, because typically what I see is that AI adoption also needs leadership support. So if your leadership does not take a clear standpoint on what AI is, how AI should transform the roles in the organization, and what the standpoint is on which AI tools to use, how to use them, as well as maybe some of the use cases that managers are already conceptualizing, then typically AI transformation programs do not stick. So I would definitely agree that infusing it into an existing leadership program is very important, because, again, if there is no policy or no standpoint on what AI can do for the organization, I would say top down. Then I would say as well that the underlying operational forces are going to maybe use the tools that they want themselves, do not know what the company standpoint is on what type of data they can put in which tool. So I think definitely a good starting point.
And if I can maybe add to that, well,
Yeah, of course.
just like you're describing now, also Danielle, they are a really important lever for the AI transformation, because very often, especially if you look at middle managers, they are the spokesperson. They see what's happening, those individual bursts and experiments within their team. They also see the strategy that the management team sets out, and they are the link into enabling and facilitating this. And if we see AI as another transformation, because very often more transformations are happening within organizations than just AI, manager skills remain important, and soft skills are important, since they will enable you in that transformation. So whether it is then about AI or any other transformation, coaching, psychological safety, managing change, it all stays relevant. And by intertwining AI in that program, it will be more top of mind. And that will then also allow them to, when they, for example, next focus on the topic of coaching, think about AI as a use case to practice with, which makes this not a standalone topic, but really a red thread throughout an entire manager training or program. So I think that that's really, really great too.
Fully agree on that. So in the green belt lean certification trajectories that I actually coach groups as well, it's higher management that I coach. Typically, they have to do some sort of AI initiative, and sometimes I feel that there's not a lot of focus on the change part of these initiatives. So that's why I think it's such a strong point, Danielle, that you are looking to infuse it rather than having it as a separate program indeed. Very good. All right.
Are there any other use cases or questions? Please feel free to share them in chat. Maybe Joppe, for you, one other question that I saw in the meantime, you also already touched upon it a little bit, but is about very often that you see that there is a burst of energy in the beginning or with individuals, but that it's quite difficult to keep that long-term momentum within the organization. Do you have any experience or tips on how to best address this?
Yeah, so what I did before is I actually coached a traineeship group at Philips. I do have to say it's a while back. So not specifically related to AI only, but just to really cultivating the skill set of digital transformation. And what I actually found very interesting is that after the session I facilitated, they created a group of individuals in the organization that kept, in this case, it was a data academy, that kept data academy up and running within the organization internally. So I think what I always suggest after one of my sessions is to create a peer group internally that keeps these topics top of mind. At the end of the AI fundamentals and AI literacy sessions, I also link to many interesting podcasts. So what I also oftentimes do is just mention in my session that these podcasts are out there, and this also keeps people more on the wagon, so to say, on what all of the developments are. So those are actually two things that I suggest. So try to cultivate peer-to-peer learning as well. So we facilitate the training itself, but it doesn't mean that your obligation to do Kaizen, continuous improvement, continuous learning, stops after that. So that's what I would actually suggest. Find some champions in the organization as well that are willing. And of course, we can help out with that as well by taking a look at who is in session and just being in close contact with the L&D team of the organizations we facilitate that. But try to keep these peer-to-peer learning active as well. And we actually, in every of our session, also recommend that to the learners.
All right, so I think we have a couple of more questions. So for those who have a bit of time, can stick around to get the answers. So Danielle asked, so how do you deliver programs like this at scale?
Good question. So what do you mean at scale? To a large audience or to the entire organization? Sorry for me to, very good. So what I typically would suggest is first getting a little bit more feeling with what the current AI literacy level of the organization is. So we have some options for that to get a little bit more feeling with that. Because typically, if there is an organization that already works very heavily with AI tooling, so I see that often, for instance, in development teams, you do not want to target them with the same type of learning experience that maybe someone in a more operational role has. So I would say scaling a program also means identifying the fact that not every audience requires the same thing from a session. So I would also try to, if possible, keep the groups with similar AI literacy level in that sense. That will allow us to scale. And naturally, in terms of the amount of sessions we give, we have more than enough capable trainers to facilitate these sessions at scale. So it will naturally not just be me, but the entire Lepaya talent pool that is able to facilitate these sessions. So I actually, we're working quite heavily on that as well on that end. Does that answer your question, Danielle? Very good.
Thanks. And I think another interesting question that came up is about the trainer profile. So yeah, it seems like it's a very unique skill set that a trainer needs to train both hard and soft skills. How do you address this?
Yeah, so for me, I'm actually quite picky on who I want to be a trainer, at least in my organization. And I actually have the feeling that for Lepaya it's exactly the same. So we are quite critical on the people that facilitate sessions, and they need to have some sort of I would actually almost even want to call it an X factor. So it means the people have to be a little bit nerdy, but they also have to be very passionate about the topics they actually facilitate. So nerdy, actual practical experience with the tool. So they need to know what they are talking about, not just facilitate a show, I oftentimes say. So that means reading up the speaker notes. They also need to have had their boots in the ground. So that's why I, as a trainer, am very passionate about also still doing consulting work. It's because then I have had my boots in the ground. I know what happens in the organizations I also facilitate classes at. And this is something that I actually find very important for a trainer. So that means X factor, a little bit nerdy, boots in the ground, but also communicative, so a great storyteller. And that makes it a little bit of a difficult trainer profile, so to say. But for me, it actually also makes sure that I have pretty good ratings over time in the Lepaya portal. So that means it seems people appreciate the way the story is delivered as well. And that's what I also look for when I upskill other trainers to facilitate on this program.
And maybe to add to that, especially around this topic, we find it really important that next to, of course, knowing the tools, having worked with the tools, being an expert on those hard skills, the trainer should also really be able to prioritize that human connection behind the data. Since AI is a topic, as we mentioned, that is still abstract and overwhelming, and sometimes even there's a bit of anxiety with people, that human connection is really key in order to make sure that everyone feels psychologically safe to work on this topic.
Yeah.
Maybe final question from Hubert. I think an interesting one for you, Joppe, around online training, maybe online versus offline, and then online focusing on all versus other AI platforms.
So our AI essentials training is sort of, I would say, a all covering a little bit of the history, so AI in general. It touches upon a little bit of literacy and ethics. It talks about working with an LLM. It talks about creating presentations, and it talks about a little bit of automation as well. So these are, for me, the three ways that you can leverage AI. What it does not very explicitly mention is agentic AI, because if you ask me, not a lot of organizations are already ready for agentic AI. So for me, that deserves a separate place because the infrastructure for agentic AI also needs to be set in place before you can start working with agentic AI. And not a lot of organizations have that set up already. What I oftentimes do in that session, though, is touch upon what agentic AI is, because I feel that in the workspace, in the area of AI, people tend to not always know what the difference is between just using an LLM, as you call it, so a large language model for the rest of the audience, what an AI assistant is, and what an AI agent is. So to me, an AI agent is actually, whenever you're working with an AI agent, you're no longer doing prompt engineering, but context engineering. So you need to give it access to tooling. An AI agent also has a reasoning capability. So it actually has the ability, autonomy to make decisions by itself. I would say not a lot of companies are ready for that yet. But what I really like about your answer as well, so we do have a Copilot Studio agentic or AI agent session. Our portfolio is also heavily changing. So this is what we have. But because of the rapidly changing landscape, we see that we are adding new training sessions to our portfolio as well. So if there is something that you want us to take a look at, feel free to reach out to us as well on that specific topic.
And Joppe,
And
very
the
quickly,
same, yeah.
what's the format of these hard skill trainings? Is it face-to-face sessions, online trainings?
It can be both. So it's the AI fundamentals one is because it touches upon many topics. It's actually a 3-hour session, and it can be facilitated face to face as well as virtual. I can see it happening that you want 2 times 1.5 hours, so to split it up and not have a too long virtual session. But that's actually how it's currently structured. So 3-hour sessions.
All right, thanks. And I think we are indeed a little bit over time. So I would just like to wrap up and thanks everybody who joined. And if you're still wondering, so where is my organization? Where are my employees in this maturity stage? And what are the capability gaps that we currently have and how to address that with learning? Feel free to scan this QR code and directly schedule a call with one of our learning consultants and get a complimentary capability scan on where you are today with data and AI capabilities and how to bridge that gap. Also, a little bit of an extra for everyone who is joining today in the webinar. We do have a 15% discount on Data and AI Academy modules all summer. So you will all receive more information about that in the email following the webinar. But until then, thanks everyone who joined. Thank you, Joppe and Sophie, and have a great rest of the day.
Yeah,
Thanks,
feel free
everyone.
to add us on LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn's are in the chat.